recently I heard the voice of God, and He spoke. He spoke to me about people losing their place, their assignment, and the first word. And how many of you know the Bible says in Ecclesiastes that a threefold cord is not easily broken? A threefold cord is not easily broken. And so those three components, those three pieces, you're going to pick them up here today through this message. So I want you to get the impact of the word. First of all, I'll say it again, it is the fact that people lose their place. There is a place. They lose their assignment because the assignment is connected to the place. And then they lose the first word. The first word is very, very, very important. Acts 17, verse 26 and 27. And it says, I'm reading out the Amplified, and he says, and he made from one common origin, one source, one blood, all nations of men to settle on the face of the earth, having definitely determined their allotted periods of time and the fixed boundaries of their habitations. Wow. How many of you are here today? All right, I want to stop there and just make sure we're getting that. Having definitely determined their allotted periods of time. How many of you know that God has given every one of us a period of time to live? It's appointed unto man once to live and then once to die. We have an appointed time. You came into the earth for such a time as this. Some would say, well, I wish I was born in some other country. Some would say, I wish I was born in this country or that country. Well, that's okay to wish those things. But how many of you know God sets us at a set time in a set boundary of a set place? And the sooner you become content with that, the better you'll be. And he says allotted periods of time of fixed boundaries of the habitation and their settlements, their lands, and their abodes. So he clarifies it even more. So that they should seek God in the hope that they may feel after him. He sets us in a place that, then he says, in hope that they might feel after God. God puts us in the place where he's already gone before us, and he knows that if we feel for him, we're going to find him. You see, it's like the hide and seek game that a father does with the children. A dad never hides too far, too out of sight. He wants the child to find him. He plays hide and go seek, but he leaves his hand showing, or he leaves a foot out, or he leaves some way so the little 2 or 3-year-old won't be frustrated, but will be able to find him. So when God is creating, he puts you in a place, and he puts you with boundaries, and he puts hope there so that if you just feel, now I love that fact that the Amplified says, feel after him. That word is a powerful word because it has a sense to it that when you ever been in a dark room? How many of you have ever felt your way through a dark room to keep from jamming your toe on something? And I have a friend that he was a college student and a great preacher, and he went home to his beautiful wife, and she was the daughter of a great prophet, and they lived up in Pennsylvania. And he went home, and he was all-American boy, and he was in school, and red-head guy, big old fella, and he went home, and all he thought about was his young, beautiful bride. And so he came home one night, and his wife had a strange habit. And the habit was that she rearranged furniture. She liked to change the setting of the house. So she would move the couch, and she would move things around, and she would move the bedroom around. She'd move the bed over here and then over there and that kind of thing. So he came in one night, lights out, dark, and he they're married. So he undressed and took off sailing through the air in his bedroom. To only find that she had moved the bed. And when he hit the ground, the room shook and she rose out of the bed, standing in the bed, scared to death. And he laid on the floor, hurting. How many of you understand that you have to close your eyes? Luke, the force is with you. You just have to feel. Come on, are you listening to me today? You just have to feel your way through. You can't always see your way through because your natural senses will deceive you. There's times where you got to shift to another level and be able to say, hope that's in me. The hope that's in me is feeling for that thing. I know God is somewhere in the room. I know He's near me. I know His miracle is there. God made places before He made people. He blessed places before He blessed people. Now, that's easy to figure. The garden, God made a garden before He made a man. He made a garden, He liked it, and He put a man in it. He made a place called the Promised Land, and He went and got Israel out of Egypt and put them there. Hello? So God has a place before He has a people. He blesses a place before He has a people. Are you listening? When you start to bear fruit, it's because you're bearing fruit because you're in the right place, and you're in the place and time of promotion, increase, the place and time of favor, and you're also in the place of protection. Now, the church is full of renegades, vagabonds, and fugitives and orphans. That's an elite group. The church is full of renegades, vagabonds, fugitives, and orphans. Men and women who are out of place, running around without being committed to a place. There's a whole bunch of people today that are orphans. They have no father. See, God always asks us in the form of a question. Where are you, Adam? In other words, in God language, it's reversed. Why aren't you where you're supposed to be, Adam? You see, Adam got out of place. That's why Eve ate something from the tree, because Adam wasn't in the right place. Every time you get out of place, you find that your family has to eat the fruit of your misplacement. I don't have the time today, but what I just said there should be a book. When you're out of place, your children are going to eat the fruit of your out of placement or your displacement. Eve ate the fruit of Adam's misplacement. Because then Eve was without a covering and the serpent could deceive her. Had Adam been present, Adam could have stepped up and said, no, we're not eating that. But because Adam was in the wrong place, Eve got displaced. And then she had two boys, Cain and Abel. And Cain became displaced because mom was out of place, because dad was out of place. That's what's going on all over America. People stop going to church and people stop serving God. They stop worshiping God. They worship their own selves. They worship money. They worship their own agendas. And then all of a sudden, they don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going on. Why are kids fighting in the schools and killing each other in the streets and all that? Listen to me, inner city Baltimore and Chicago. If you as parents would get up off the couch and get back in the house of God, your children might take a chance. Judas lost his place. He was one of the 12. Come on today, are you here? He was one of the 12 and he lost his place. But how many of you know, as soon as he was removed, how many of you heard of Matthias? Matthias was brought in and replaced Judas, because as soon as the person's ministry is lost, God has already somebody else in the background. When you surrender your place and your assignment, God's already heard your mind and heart, and He has someone else prepared to take your assignment. You know, Peter is an amazing story. Peter almost gave up his place and his assignment, but Jesus' word saved Peter. What do I mean? That's where we get this first word. How many of you know God is a God who never lets us go and do what He hadn't already told us was going to happen or warned us? Peter, you're going to deny me. And 3 times before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me. But He said, Peter, afterwards, when you're converted, you'll bring many into the kingdom. You see, Peter was a guy who had a word. And Peter remembered the word when he was in the moment of moving out of his place. And the word that God gave him drove Peter back to the heart of God, and he finished his destiny. Placement is the sphere where God puts us in or calls us to in Him or in His things, whether it's in the spiritual or physical realm, to accomplish His assigned purpose. God has given us the earth as our assignment. However, there are areas of jurisdiction or boundaries given to us by God on this earth. When we have more authority and more influence and more strength than we'll have in other areas. In other words, God has metrons. God gives us metrons. You see, I have an authority in this East Coast. It runs from about D.C. up through to Massachusetts. And I have a metron. I can go into those regions, Philadelphia and places in New Jersey I've gone over the years, and I can call things into being because I have a metron of influence and authority. There are 5 points related to proper placement. Quickly, I'm going to give you those 5 points. Are you here today? Yes. Now, the first blessing is that placement enables you to find your rightful place for life. That is so big. Some of you take that note down and you shrink it out of misunderstanding. The first blessing is the placement, that in placement happens, enables you to find your rightful place for life. God's primary purpose after creating you, being born again, new creature, is to move you into the proper placement of your life. In your placement, everything you need is supplied. It's when you don't get in that place, and some have to go through the journey of deserts to get to the place. But when you finally get to the place, fruitfulness comes, rest comes, protection comes, all the blessings start to come. Things you knew that God promised you years ago start to come to the forefront. Now, the second blessing is that proper placement releases supernatural provisions in your life. Listen good. Proper placement releases supernatural provisions in your life. 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 2 and 4 and 7 and 9. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, Get thee hence. This is Elijah. Get thee hence and turn eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith that is before Jordan. Verse 7 and 9 comes later. There, ravens. How many of you know raven is the dirtiest bird there is? And in the Israeli Old Testament, they could not be and handle and receive anything from the raven. God, knowing His own word, did something so unique. He let a bird that is supposed to be non-connected to Israel, He let that bird feed him. If I put myself in the place where God has to supply my need, then God will use the unfamiliar. He'll use the unnatural thing to bless you because He wants you to know He's still God. Stay in your place, you'll stay in your grace. Come on. Now the third blessing we receive proper placement is divine protection, covering. In Exodus, the place called Goshen. Look at this. This is so powerful. In Exodus, there was a place called Goshen. That's where the Israelites were when God was bringing judgment, all the plagues on Egypt. Where Israel was placed, they had light when Egypt had darkness. They were protected from the plagues and even the angel of death. The destroyer, God said. Goshen means drawing near. They had to stay near to the Lord, his placement, so that they could be protected by the Lord. The fourth blessing from proper placement is God helps us from falling by removing pride. Proverbs 29:23, a man's pride will bring him low, but he who is of a humble spirit will obtain honor. There are other places that might seem to be attractive to our soul, but we have to come to the reasoning that God puts us in a place. We don't put ourselves in a place. Well, I like a black church choir, I like a black singer, I like this Chinese singer, I like them to teach more, I like them to, oh, that's fine. Ain't nobody picking on that. But God said, you didn't pick your parents. So I'd like to be around a preacher that just didn't always seem like he was just right up in my face. I polish my shoes more often in that church than any place I go. That preacher's always walking on my feet. No, the problem is you're always coming in here with shoe polish in your mouth. Called foot. You see, when God places you, like it is with parents, you need to get away from the idea that you have choices. Because God knows what you need to give you what you need to make you what your assignment is. If your assignment is sitting in that pew, you've got to get to that pew to get it. The fifth blessing that comes from proper placement is the release of ministry and the glory of God. In the book of Exodus, God took 16 chapters to tell Israel how to build his tabernacle. Think of that. 16 chapters he dedicated on how to build a tent. God is building a tabernacle. We are called the house of God. And God is building you a tabernacle. And he's given explicit instructions of what that tabernacle looks like so that his glory can come and live in that tabernacle. Exodus chapter 12, verse 21 and 23. God said, stay in your house of covenant, of the blood, so that the destroyer won't come to your house to smite you. How many of you know we need to stay? We need to fight to protect the first word in our life. See, when God speaks the first time, you need to stop looking for him to speak the second time. Because what you're hoping is he'll change his mind. You got to fight to protect the first word in your life. 2 Peter 1:19. We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto you do well that you take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, until the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts. How do you know there is a sure word of prophecy? The first word that the Lord speaks in the beginning of a venture, a vision venture in your life, a vision pursuit, that first word is what you have to grab, capture, and hold on to. It is the sure word of the Lord that God speaks to your spirit that brings sanctioning and credibility to a God pursuit or a God decision and a God endeavor that sets the course of your life. Listen to me. When you're making decisions in your life, you've got to know the first word is the word you judge every other word. Luke chapter 8, put it on the board, verse 22 and 25. Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples. And he said unto them, let us go over unto the other side of the lake. Can I play this out like this? Jesus gets in the boat and he steps down into the boat. It's a ship. Steps into it. All the guys are in the boat. And Jesus goes, yea, saith me, thou shalt go to the other side. Saith me. Then he says, I'm going to bed. They get out in the water. They get in a storm. They get in the rough seas. They wake him up. Master, care us not that we perish. He gets up. He calms the wind, not the water. He calms the wind. The sea went flat. He speaks to the wind. The wind stops. The seas go down. And he turns to them and says, where is your faith? What he was saying was, why'd you wake me up? I told you we were going to the other side. I did not, he could have said, you know, guys, I knew there was a storm coming. You know, I am God. I knew there was a wind coming. I knew there was a storm coming. All you needed to do was just keep sailing, because what I told you first is going to happen no matter what comes. How do you believe the first word was good enough? Adam, you can have the whole garden. Just don't touch the tree. I can't prove this, but Adam was somewhere looking for another word. And his wife got one, because the serpent gave her another word. Remember what he said? Did God say? I happen to believe that, saints, when God speaks, he gives a clear word. And I thank God for his word. His word is alive in me. It's been in there since 1974. That's a long time. And it's grown and it's multiplied and it's not done yet. So when it came the other night, I went, good Lord, not finished with me yet. Hallelujah. There's still places to go. There's still cities and nations that I'm supposed to go and be an anchor. So my wife and I are going to devise a new ministry logo, and it's going to have a big anchor on it. Because I like boats and anchors. Because I want people to get anchored in the house of God. Anchored in your purpose of God. When you're in the right place, you're in the right assignment, the first word will satisfy you. When you displace, you want another word. Hebrews 10:32. Now don't think there ain't some battle going on, but call to remembrance the former days in which after you were illuminated, you got the word. You endured a great fight of affliction. Great means mega. Fight means athlesis or athlete. Affliction is mental pressure. It means a battle in the soul. So after you've been illuminated, then there's going to be a little fight going on. And that battle that's going on is with your soul, suke, that says, I want to do my own thing. Do you know there's some that sits in this, some of you sit in this house, and I bring in prophets, and you're crying out to God, give me a word. Truth is, you're saying, God, give me a word that I like. And then they pass by you and you go, wow. The reason God passes you by is because he loves you enough to not let a prophet be a fool and give you a second word when you haven't even embraced the first word. Placement, threefold cord. Placement, assignment, and first word. The first word that God says is the word that will shape your life forever.